everyone, it's Cindy. Welcome back to Studioloo. I'm here today with the flip through of Song of the Acorn Fairy, another of the fairy journals in this series. So this one is inside of a vintage book, a beautiful sort of bronzy, russet, kind of rusty tone book cloth. It's just beautiful. I was really inspired by it, and so I just kind of went with the colors that it was bringing to me. I added bits of gold dust kind of here and there and little swirls. This is a cabinet card style front with the Acorn Fairy here. I've used some brads here to just kind of add a little bit more decoration to the front. I love these florals with birds around the edges. The spine is covered in lace that I dyed, this amazing bronzy and gold color, and you can see the 4 bindings right there, but they kind of blend. You don't see them so much on the lace. And then on the back I added this crystal here with lots of copper around it, just a little bit of extra magic. And the closure, you can see there is a gold brad on the back, and the tie is actually my hand spun merino silk yarn. So it is like 3 strands, plied strands that have been knotted together, so it's a nice durable tie, and they are threaded right through the back here, and then they just tie around the journal. So you can see there's some leaves and some ribbons and bits and bobs sticking out the side here. This is a larger journal. This is actually 10.5 inches by 7, and it has 4 signatures. So when you open it on up, it follows along in the same kind of way of the other journals that I've shown you in the fairy collection. So I've used this beautiful scrapbook paper as the backing for the end papers on the inside of the book here. Let me just take these out. See this beautiful paper? And then I've made a pocket here, and I've added some more botanicals here. And as with all of these series of journals, I've added an original 1950s photograph. This one is just of this beautiful lady sitting with some calla lilies on like a beautiful veranda, and I've added some glorious fairy wings to her with gel pen. And you'll see some pink ledger covering the spine here. We have a fairy rhyme here, and it says more magical even than fairies. And inside the pocket we have this beautiful bird from a field guide and a large blue butterfly, and those just pop right on inside here as so. And then on this side, this is actually a public domain image of, I forget the photographer's name, but he did these amazing photos of like these beautiful women out in the woods with these little fairy figures. So these have been printed and coffee dyed. I've stitched some lace along the side of this fairy paper page. You'll see these fairy papers throughout the journal series are these iridescent, sparkling papers of different colors, and they're locally made. And here we have a large journal card that I made with this fairy. That just pops on inside here. And then some stenciling and a little mushroom down here and some washi. This is a Teal and Tattered fairy page from her digital kit. And then this is a nice orange page, and clipped on it we have a beautiful big book page that has a bit of writing space here. I love this book page of these little kids running through these, pine trees, and there's a cottage and lots of mushrooms, little fairies sitting here, and little bunny mice and berries. And I've added some avocado dyed paper down here for writing space. And look at this side, this monarch fairy, or like moth fairy. Isn't she just beautiful? So yeah, I had to include that page. It's just so pretty. And that is just a rusty paper clip holding onto that. And then we have some Shirley Barber fairies here and a little bit of a collage for writing space. And more over here. Avocado dyed paper with a fabric tab. Some of the fairy wing fabric. Excuse me. Ribwort plantain fairy. The Song of the Sow Thistle fairy. This is a little tuck spot here. The best times to see a fairy are at twilight, midnight, just before sunrise, and midday. Once a fairy has been spotted, be sure to keep your eyes fixed upon it. The fairy will only be seen for as long as one looks at it unwaveringly. And that is some cabbage dyed paper, and this book has received the Fairyland seal of approval. There's just writing space in here. There's just some beautiful fairy book page. and that just pops up there. And then we have a little cluster here with a swan. And this is from a fairy book about time and place. And it's like a journal entry about like a fairyland kind of journey. This is a pink marbled page with some beautiful pink lace here. This is a vintage lace. And we have a dragonfly page here. This is from a fairy book. Over here we have a vellum fairy, some facts about fairies. This is a piece of vellum with this beautiful like agate rainbow print, some eco-printed paper, lots of beautiful. This was from some red dyed eucalyptus. Stork's Bill fairy, the Song of the Ribwort plantain fairy, some tea-dyed paper with fabric stitched down the side, vintage stationery, botanical. This is just some fairy art. Harebell, hawthorn, hazel, heather, heart ease. This is from a Flower Fairies book. Has some nice sort of salmony pink lace down the side that goes really well with this page. This is just an end paper from a book, like a fly page that I really liked. She lives beneath a yellow toadstool and a sky she's never seen. And this is from Zelda and Esmeralda, which is a locally authored book in the Muskoka region. And I had to use it. I found it when I was on vacation. It had to go into the fairy journals. And this is a collaged butterfly tag with vellum wings and this lovely owl here. Tales of grateful and helpful fairies. That just tucks in there. And we're at the center of the first signature here, a fairy rhyme. Fairy places, fairy things, fairy woods for the wild bee wings, tiny trees for tiny dames. These must all be fairy names. Robert Louis Stevenson, The Flowers. And I love these fairies, they're so pretty. And here we have some more fairy art, and then this is a little Cicely Mary Barker journal entry from the 12th of May. And we have a little fairy stamp here. And then some more of that paper. Michaelmas daisy, mountain ash, mulberry, narcissus, nasturtium, lots of fairies, some stenciling. This is a side tuck spot. Having written the letter, I realize that it all sounds rather odd, so I will not send it. I feel much calmer now, so I shall endeavor to return to sleep. This is Cicely Mary Barker talking about, you know, the mission of going on her fairy, you know, journey, and she's limited to who she can talk to about it. It's all this lovely journal writing from the Fairyopolis book, and I've added some nice lace down the side and a fairy button card on the inside. And just some botanicals here, some washi tape, some of that vintage stationery. This is Fleur, and we have another Barker fairy here, just a little cluster. More botanicals, foxglove, chicory fairy, Jack go to bed at noon, more of my botanical eco print paper, and more of that fun vellum. Secret ingredients, fairy dust number 3. And so this is a recipe to make fairy dust and some facts about fairies, fire fairies. This is some of my hand spun yarn and some vintage lace stitched on pink marbled paper. Some tea dyed paper, sow thistle fairy, the Song of the Chicory fairy, some fairy wing paper or fabric, avocado dyed paper, Shirley Barber fairies, both sides, some collaging with shibori paper. And then on this orange page, I've used a paper clip to attach. This is a full page from the Fairyopolis book, and it's just so lovely. Like, you can write on the back. It's like a large piece of stationery, and it's got a little entry here about the British Fairy Folklore Society, and just beautiful illustration. I did want to cut some of these pages up because they were just really nice, and I feel like they offer a nice big amount of writing space in a big journal, so I kept some of them for that reason. This is a Teal and Tattered fairy page, and then clipped on here with this paper clip we have this collage tag. It's got this beautiful quill here, some fabric, and it's got some painty paper on back. And that just clips on there on this fairy paper. So you see two pieces of fairy paper here, the orange and the pink. This one has this beautiful botanical pocket, and this piece of stationery inside has mountains on back and then this fairy on front. Some washi and another of the Teal and Tattered pages. This is avocado dyed paper with my hand spun yarn stitched on here. This is the Healing Fairy Tarot card from the Fairy Tarot, and this is an Amity Bloom tabbed index card, journal card. Some Shirley Barber fairies there, and this just tips out as you saw. So over here it tips out as well. We've got some shibori paper up here and more from the Shirley Barber fairy book. This is avocado dyed. Some just really fun digital agate paper. Pink stationery. This is a Barber fairy and another one, chestnut. And then this fairy paper is the green tone, and we have a large piece of stationery clipped on there with these beautiful Eric Kincaid fairies. And that just clips on here. And then a red page with this little bird going on a trip with a little bug here. I thought it was a cute little woodland creature. Sweet chestnut, sweet pea, tansy, tottergrass, some more digital fairy art, and a little girl, maybe she's looking up at a fairy. And then this is just a foresty kind of book page. It has all these fun cutouts and it flips out. This side has a nest. And then we have some tip out fairy art here. More fairy art, more vintage stationery. And then this is just a cute little fairy book page with a squirrel. And then another little fairy down here. This has a little verse, the fairy song, and some of my hand-dyed batik fabric here with some spraying. This is a Shirley Barber book pocket, and we have just kind of like some landscape book page back here, but this is Shirley Barber fairies on this journal card, kind of fairies flying in the moonlight. And then we have all sorts of fairies here. This is kind of like a story about like a battle among different kind of colonies of creatures. And then this is a little fairy here from Cicely Mary Barker. Some more fairy arts. Traveler's Joy, tulip, wallflower, white bindweed, white clover. This is a cluster here, little tuck spot for this cute little fairy art on some red paper. And then clipped on here we have this large collage journal card, some woodland creatures, more fairy paper, the Song of Sweet Chestnut Fairy, and another Barber fairy, and the catkins, more of the pink stationery, stenciling, more of that fun digital, some pine cones on avocado dyed paper, some beautiful Shirley Barber fairies, and then a little tuck spot here, more fairies, more kind of collaging, and a little snail here. And this is a large journal card just with some botanicals, and that just tucks in here. And this is avocado dyed paper with some nice floral lace. And then more of the Teal and Tattered fairy page, some stenciling. More fairy paper in pink and yellow. We have a large fairy pocket here. There's some painty fabric, vintage linen up here as a tab. And then this is the tag that's inside, the fairy tag. And then this is another one of those fun tip outs. And there's a little pocket made over here that holds onto this large bit of stationery. And this is another of the Kincaid fairies. Just beautiful. And it's stationery with packaging on the back to write on. And that just pops in there. This is some of my eco-printed paper with some lace down the side. You can see the rose petals and some rusty cogs here. Stella waved her wand and the zebra had his stripes. So there's a fairy and a zebra, mushrooms and leaves. Orchis fairy, pansy. This is some of my yellow dyed paper. Another Teal and Tattered fairy page. These are some little cards from the flower fairies: apple, rowan, and oak, ash, willow, and net trees, scarlet pimpernel, self-heal, shepherd's purse, shirley poppy, slow, snapdragon, silver birch, and then another dyed yellow page. A squirrel up-tuck pocket there on some digital paper with an Amity Bloom tab index card. And then a little pocket down here with some botanicals and a little Amity Bloom pocket tag with a little journal card, all botanical. The Song of the Cherry Tree Fairy, the Song of the Poplar Fairy, little fairy tag of the Ivy Fairy on my yellow dyed paper. Just a beautiful digital page. Another one. This is like magic paper. It's so pretty. And then more of my yellow dyed paper. This one is a sunburst and it has some fabric down the side. This is just some beautiful book page fairy art. And this beautiful antler fairy in the center here. Oops. This side we have more of that beautiful fairy art. And this is a vintage mushroom card on some of my yellow dyed paper. More of that magic paper, beautiful fairy digital, and some of my yellow dyed paper. I like how these pages go together. I also like all the different variances of the page sizes in this book. Like you see a lot when you're on a certain page and it lays nice and flat. This is a Barker fairy. And on this side we have a botanical pocket that holds on to this journal card of some fairy art from Goebel. This is the Song of the Mulberry Fairy. Look in a book from the Fairy Tarot on some digital paper with this little, this is from a fairy books. These little kids are looking over this rooted tree and there's all these little fairies under the tree roots. And this has a side tuck. There's a little hedgehog there. It's more of that foresty paper and just some little fairy stationery. It just tucks on in here. And a little bird here on some yellow dyed paper. And this is just a big bit of fairy art with this little fairy and all these birds. And this is a side tuck for this journal card. The fairies all flying around this couple. And they're like, I believe, like a prince and princess. And on this side we just have some botanicals and there's little fairies here. More of the flower fairy cards: blackthorn, hawthorn, lilac, beech, elder, holly. Another Teal and Tattered fairy page. Some yellow dyed paper. Zinnia fairy. Some nice purple stationery with botanicals. Stenciling. Stella was coming nearer and nearer to them on her butterfly. So it's a fairy on a butterfly, a caterpillar. More of my eco-printed rose paper and some leaves stitched on there, silk leaves. More of the really beautiful printed leaves. A little bunny stamp on fairy paper. And then we have a pocket on both sides, fairies, botanicals. And here we have a journal card. And over here we have a couple of things. So we have this journal card, which is botanical with fairy dust, and then this little Amity Bloom tuck with this little bit of stationery inside, little journal card, and those just tuck on in this little tuck. And then over here we have this large piece of stationery made from scrapbook paper. Oh, grown-ups cannot understand, and grown-ups never will, how short the way to fairyland across the purple hill. That just tucks up here. This is an original page from an Enid Blyton book, The Adventures of Pip, and it's Pip there with a whole bunch of frogs. And then I've stitched a flower and some gold netting onto this avocado dyed page. These are some Shirley Barber fairies. Upper tuck spot here, more of the fun Shirley Barber, and then this little booklet of this fairy and this little deer with these beautiful antlers with leaves all in them. And then this is just a little stitched down bit of landscape with some lace on avocado dyed paper. An acorn here. Some of these cute little children. These are these little kid fairies and this little bird. And just a little bit of collage here with some catkins. Avocado dyed paper with these ribbons down the side of, they were like a butterfly fabric. And then this is some lovely art, just some fairy art from a book. Some painted space on from the same book, just for extra writing. And it's like a castle here, very magical scene. Some more pink stationery, the little tuck spot, and a Shirley Barber journal card. Tansy fairy. More of my eco-printed paper. More Teal and Tattered. This is one of my skyline pages, so it has all botanicals. If you see a fairy ring, and we've got some birds and butterflies. Another Barker fairy. The Song of the Robin's Pincushion fairy. This is just some fun like bullet journal paper that has little blue and pink crosses and then little squares on this side. This is a collage with a fabric tab. And then this beautiful dark fairy in the center. More collage and some more of that fun notebook paper. It's got triangles and graph on this side. Another Barker fairy. The Song of the Horse Chestnut fairy. This is like a skyline page. So we have fairies, leaves, and mushroom with an amity bloom tag pocket down here. Barker fairy journal card that goes back here, or Cicely Mary Barber rather, goes back here. And then this lovely little bit with this bird and these flowers just tucks right on in here. And more collage up top here. Another Teal and Tattered fairy journal page. More eco-printed paper. The Self-Heal fairy. This is a little bit of silk and wool felt stitched on some vintage stationery. This is some more fun fairy art with some stenciling around it. And more beautiful book page from a children's book with a little fairy peeking out at this little girl reading. This is avocado paper, and we have a little poplar fairy stamp down here. More of these cute little butterfly children fairies in this bird's nest. And then we have a triangle pocket here holding on to this beautiful fairy art and a little bit of collaging in back with a rainbow. Avocado dyed paper. More Shirley Barber fairies and some lace and some collage, the rainbow fairies, avocado dyed paper, vintage Enid Blyton book page. This is a piece of fairy paper, this time in the pink, and we have this large piece of fairy stationery from a book page. So the back is blank and this is the front. So cute, right? And that just clips on here. And then we put our paper clip here. And then we've arrived at the back where we have this fun freeform style pocket. More of that beautiful paper, and it says Fairy with Wings. And we have this owl from a vintage bird field guide. We'll tuck that in there along with my little wee Cindy and my card. Plunk those all in there. And then we've reached the end of this beautiful journal, and here's another look at that gem. So if you're seeing this video, that means that this journal is up in my Etsy shop. If not yet, it will be in the next 30 minutes. So thank you so much for joining me again for the Song of the Acorn Fairy. I really appreciate you, and I hope you have a lovely day. You can find links to my shop and other things down below in the description box. Bye for now.